Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Geopolitical Cousins. We recorded July 14th, Tuesday, around 12:30 p.m. U.S. Central Time. We'll get this out as quick as we can because most of this is about Iran. We spend a little time talking about soccer and then some things about Japan, El Niño, other impacts around the world. Email me at jacob@jacobshapiro.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Enjoy the World Cup. We will see you out there. All right, listeners, Tuesday, July 14th. It's about 12:45 p.m. Central Time. Cousin, I think we have to start with Iran, don't we? I don't think that we have any choice.
Yes.
I'll set up the play-by-play a little bit here, and then we can kind of dive into. I actually don't even know what you're thinking, and you probably don't know what I'm thinking yet either. But I would situate the most recent round of hostilities began around July 6th or 7th. You might remember that Iran doesn't claim responsibility for this, but some tankers got blown up in the Strait of Hormuz, 3 of them.
Attacked. They weren't blown up.
Attacked.
They were just...
Right, sorry. Yes. Attacked.
They didn't sink.
Attacked.
Did you know, sorry to interrupt the flow, but did you know that to this day, only one, I think, commercial vessel has sunk?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But it might maybe 2, like a recent one, a chemical carrier, I think is severely damaged right now. But it was a tugboat that I think Bahrain sent to help a disabled vessel, and then that one was sunk. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. So you're right, July 6th, that was...
That's terrible luck to be the only ship that has been sunk so far in this conflict. Anyway, so Iran denied responsibility for that, but Qatar blamed Iran, Saudi Arabia blamed Iran, and most importantly, the United States blamed Iran. And the next day, the United States hit I think it was several different targets, a bunch of different strikes, and the United States has not really let up since then. And the way I've been framing this is I think that Iran was not so happy with the actual progress on the MOU, so they allowed a couple of ships to be hit in the Strait of Hormuz, and the United States used that to say, okay, we're ready for round 2. Let's get this shit on. So now we're a week later, going into the weekend, maybe there were going to be some negotiations, maybe not. Over the weekend, we get more fighting. We get President Trump saying the deal is done. It's over. Monday, we get the Guardian of the Strait of Hormuz tweet and the 20% toll tweet. It's Tuesday. Today, we get the 20% toll will be substituted with investments in the Gulf. It's going to be great investments. We're going to make a lot of money. And the fighting continues. Where are you at right now, cousin? And then I can jump in. I bet we're going to be in different places on this.
Well, I disagree a little bit in terms of whose responsibility it is.
Great.
Yeah, so you're right. You're correct that Iran started it. That's an objective fact. At least this time around, obviously, the U.S. started it on February 28th. But what happened was U.S. just retaliated to those 3 vessels being targeted, but then Iran retaliated to the retaliation in a pretty profound way. So at every time there was a moment where things could have just been left at where they are, Iran did not choose to do that. They chose the path of violence. So that's, I think, something we need to explain. Why is that the case? And I think there's probably 3 reasons why Iran is doing what it's doing. First of all, how would you feel if your head of state was laid into the ground? Well, okay, maybe a bad question, but
it's a complicated question. Please finish the question.
Yeah, so Iran delayed burying the supreme leader, who is also a religious figure and a head of state of the country, only the second that they've known since 1979. And there was this period during which I believe that for domestic political purposes, all sorts of reasons, hardliners versus softliners, this, that, or the other, plus the fact that it's, you got millions of people in Iran, mourning, going to funeral. It's a very delicate moment for Iran because it is a manifestation in the physical realm of their absolute fucking weakness. Now, this is where the Twitterati who listen to this are going to blow up and you're going to be like, the Americans lost the war. Iran is winning. It's all about China. No, guys, pump the brakes a little. This is a country that does not have the ability to defend its airspace. This is a country whose head of state was just popped like that. And so it's a very vulnerable moment. This early July, they had the body of the supreme leader go to Iraq, to various Shia shrines. He came back. They buried him. And I think that that's why the violence is necessary for domestic political reasons, to distract from the reality on the ground or in the ground, 6 feet under the ground on top of the ground. I think he's in a mausoleum. The point here is like that is something that no one's talking about. This like narrative that we have in the rest of the world that Trump is an idiot, America lost, like everything, America sucks. Oh, they couldn't even defeat Iran. Meanwhile, Iranians are like bearing, their number one pick. They're bearing their Messi. They're bearing the head of state. They're bearing a religious like Ayatollah, which is a stark reminder of like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't like go to CFR events and listen to Twitter. Maybe the reality is we actually don't have the ability to defend ourselves against Americans and Israelis, and they can fucking kill anyone they want whenever the fuck they want it. So this is a problem. And so that's the first reason why I think Iran has, in this moment in July, done what they've done. The second issue is that I think that they really, really care about the where vessels transit, clearly. They don't want the southern Omani route. They want the northern route. It seems kind of weird because there is absolutely no evidence that ships that do take the northern route pay the toll. That is not what it's about. It's semantic. But I think for Iran, they need to do that because what they're trying to do is they're trying to kind of take an inch by inch from America. They just want to exhaust the US. They just want to exhaust Americans. And this is one way you exhaust them. You exhaust them by constantly having these little bouts of kinetic activity so that one day when you explode a nuclear device, it will be because you had exhausted them. This is like a salami tactic where you're just kind of getting American public, American politicians, just American commentators, used to and tired of talking about this shit so that you can do more. And I mean, look at you and me, like we're sad we have to talk about Iran, even though it's like content, Anyways, the third reason, and I think this is my most important reason, and I've been explaining this, to my clients and everything. I think most people in finance are trying to predict oil prices. You should use oil prices to predict kinetic activity. There's a reflexive relationship between oil prices and violence. Oil prices are not a dependent variable to be forecast. They are an independent variable. They're an input. What I've observed over the last 3 months, 4 months, is that every time oil prices get to an uncomfortable level, the two sides start sounding reasonable. Every time oil prices are low, they start chest beating. Why? Because they're both bound by the material constraints. Of course they are, by the way. Obviously. Like, it's a fact. Otherwise, we would be in a different place. And so, like, WTI went under $70. It was like 65, 66 bucks. Brent, I think, hit 68 at one point.
I think lower than that, but yeah.
Brent, I don't think Brent was lower than 68. But like, anyways, the point is they both dipped under 70. And so, both sides are looking around saying like, look, I mean, if we start some shit up, I mean, what's going to happen? Like, the world's not going to end. The world's going to end at like 150. So like from here to at least 90, 95, let's try to irk each other because we hate each other in truth. We don't like each other. We hate each other. We don't want to deal. In truth, we just don't want the world to blow up and then be blamed for it. In Trump's case, more domestically. In Iran's case, more internationally. Like Iran does not, as I've said on this podcast many times, Iran does not want millions of people in Indonesia, India, Bangladesh, China to like starve and protest against governments. Like that's not what they're in for. So I think that that's a really important point, and no one's kind of figured out that oil prices are actually determining the pace of conflict. They're not something you're forecasting. They're not a dependent variable. They're an input. They should be an input into your model. And so lo and behold, we get under $70. Both sides suddenly like, oh, we hate each other. And you'll see now, oil prices are at $85 Brent. We're going to be 90. Maybe we hit 100 next week. And then both sides are going to be like, okay, well, it's time to like reconsider the deal. So I don't think anything has changed. One last thing I will say just before I let you go. Last spice into my broth. February 28th, this thing started. You and I talked about Iran all the time in March and April. Blah, 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 blah. Inventories. Whatever the state of inventories was in March and April, I think we can both agree it's deteriorated. I do not for 1 minute believe some of the global inventory numbers that seem to suggest inventories have gone up. We have the SPR figure. The American Strategic Petroleum Reserve has never been lower. The faint sound you hear in the background of your life, if you're hearing that constantly, that's the sound of our SPR. And for you, it might be louder because it's over there, I believe, near you.
Yeah,
It's
it
like
is.
it is being drained. So what the fuck are we talking about, Jacob? Constraints haven't like suddenly gone away. They've tightened. And yes, all the oil bulls were wrong, and all the people who were doomers saying we're going to run out of fuel in May or June were wrong. You and I listened to them too. We said the war had to end in May, like clearly it didn't. China dropped its imports massively for sure. But all that said, the reality is America is in a worse position today than it was in February, March, and April. It has less interceptors, less missiles, and a lot less fuel in the SPR. And by the way, the SPR numbers are interesting. Nobody really knows what happens with the last 100 million barrels or 200. At some point, that just becomes sludge. It's actually unusable. So it's not like you can drain this thing to a zero. The last bits in the SPR at the bottom is really, really like almost unusable. And we don't know where that is. We don't know where the number is. At some point, we're going to draw a barrel of oil out of it, and it's going to be shit. So there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a lot to pick at there, and I agree with some of it, but I disagree with other parts of it. I mean, we don't have to rehash this argument, but I don't think Iran cares about Indonesia or political unrest in other places. Like, I think it's completely irrelevant to them. For them, it's a war of survival, and if somebody has to suffer in Indonesia, so be it. Like, that's not going to figure into the calculations of the Islamic Republic. But we don't have to rehash that old argument. I think it is worth going back to who started this, or at least that narrative of events. Because I agree with you that the Iranians were looking to poke the bear a little bit, but it doesn't seem to me that they wanted it to escalate in this way.
Yeah.
I think they were thinking of
Good
this
point.
in terms of, oh, we've had some tit for tat back and forth. We're going to do a little tit because we don't like what's going on. Like, where is the 300 billion? Where are the things that we're talking about? We're seeing no movement here whatsoever, and you're promising that ships can go
Titillating
through.
America.
And,
I like it.
And this is one place where I would differ with you. The lower the price of oil goes, the worse it is for Iran. The higher the price of oil in the context of negotiations, the more leverage they have. So if oil is going to go to 68 or 65 or below or whatever it goes to, every dollar
we
it
agree
goes
on that.
down.
Just to be clear.
Well, yeah.
We agree on that. So there's all sorts of reasons why you want to start kinetic activity at $70. One of them, as you just elucidated, is just make more money. Like, oh shit, $70. Come on, guys. Like, this is way too low. On the other hand, there's other reasons. Like, you look tough. You can look as if you know that you can end fighting at any point, then you're comfortable starting. Who's not comfortable with war? People on Twitter, you and I. Although I don't care. But the Iranians know they can stop at any time, and so do the Americans. And that's why when oil prices go down to 70, both sides are comfortable, like crickets synchronizing their cricketing in the trees. Like, that's what these two actors are doing.
I disagree. I think Iran is uncomfortable when it gets down to 70. But, like, I think the bigger point is
they're comfortable with stopping when it gets to 90 or 100. And so, yes, you are comfortable starting the war.
But we're outside. Like, I think we're outside of that frame of reference. You can stop when it's these tit for tat things. But the United States took the titillation and said, okay, game on. And you're right, Iran started climbing the escalatory ladder because they didn't want to look weak. But the United States response has been disproportionate. And I think Iran has gotten to the point over the weekend to where Iran realized, okay, this is no longer about the negotiation. The MOU is dead on arrival. This is part 2 of the war. And to your point about the SPR and everything else like that, everybody said the oil bulls were wrong and the doomers were wrong. They still have time to be right. Like, maybe they were wrong about May or June or July, but like, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater quite yet. And here I would say, just from an analytical perspective, but from an analytical perspective, I have to push back on this idea that oil is going to set a ceiling to the conflict itself. I think that's maybe part of the reason the White House is doing that. Oil could do that in the macro context we had from February until June. But to your point, our current macro context, U.S. reserve is down to a 43-year low. OECD strategic inventories are at their lowest since 1990. OPEC, spare capacity or surplus capacity was at 3 million barrels per day at the end of 2025. Today, it's effectively zero, according to the latest data. You add on to that 2 other things. In February, you didn't have Zelensky running around with drones bombing the shit out of Russian oil energy infrastructure. And yes, Russian production has actually not decreased that much, but Russian production is down a little bit. Russian exports have not fallen quite yet. But we have the CEO of Rosneft saying, we're going to start banning petroleum exports because we've got fuel shortages in Moscow. So what if Ukraine use this as an opportunity to push the dagger even more forward? And then last but not least, and this is what the oil bulls and the doomers really got wrong, and everybody got this wrong, China cut its oil imports in half. And it's amazing that China did that. They were able to stabilize markets. They had a big reserve themselves. The estimates are 1.4, I think, billion barrels or whatever. We don't know the exact number, but China's still an energy importer. And so for how long can China actually do this? If we're going to have Straits of Hormuz closed for another 2 months, another 3 months, like how long does this actually happen? And the reason I want to push back against this idea that oil is going to determine action, like, yes, that's how it worked before. But if we get oil that goes to 140 in this macro context, I mean, maybe the animal spirits of the markets go away because maybe we're dealing with the physical shortages that those oil bulls like actually talked about a little bit. So I'll push back a little bit there. You come back at me and tell me where I'm wrong.
Well, you're wrong because you don't have a forecast, right?
Do you have a forecast? Do you know where this is going?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sticking to my guns. And in fact, I think the guns are loaded with more deadly weapons because of bullets, because of everything you said. Precisely because SPR is like, you're sucking on a straw that's like down to the slushy melted ice. The power of the high oil prices to motivate toning down of tensions is even greater. And to your point, like, okay, let's say I disagree with you on who's to blame. You seem to assign a lot of blame and catalyst for the current bout of violence to America.
Well, no, as I said, I think Iran started the violence. I just think Iran started the violence as part of a negotiation. And I think the United States clearly took the provocation as an
Yes.
opportunity to open the war again. Like,
But let's
I don't care about blame. Like, both
no, no,
sides are
but let's
fighting each other and bombing each other, but it's for
but
different purposes.
let's say you're right. I mean, I would then say that's even easier than for me to be right. Like once we get to $100 oil, you're going to see toning down of American attacks. Because it's America that's, I would argue, more constrained than Iran. You're correct. I don't think Iranians like care about Indonesian revolution. I think they care about Chinese, and the Chinese are telling them, calm the fuck down. Don't make us send you to Islamabad again. Like so. But I would agree if there's a hierarchy of who cares more about the realities you've articulated in terms of inventories, it is America. But by your own definition, America is kind of the leading in terms of the violence here. And so that just strengthens my view that once we get to $100, $120, America is going to have to change its course. And one thing that I disagree with is like you have a very broad statement like we're back into a war. We're not in a tit for tat. Right? So you're like, look, this isn't tit for tat. This is like serious conflict. So I agree with that, but let's be very clear on what that means because February 28th to about end of March was regime change war. Then we went into something else. We're not in regime change war at all. At all. Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. President Trump has stated he's not seeking regime change. He stated it a couple of days ago. And also, I can tell you that they're both still drawing within the lines. So both children in this case are still sticking to the crayons, drawing and coloring within the lines. What do I mean by that? The US has not really ramped up what it's said before, like electric power plants and this and that. It's sticking to military sites. And when the US CENTCOM came out and said we hit 140 targets, a bunch of them were like little tiny boats. They're hitting a lot of stuff around Hormuz. So they're focusing on Iran's ability to like send drones and stuff, which is fair. And Iranians are hitting American bases. There's no more hotels in Dubai. There's no more hotels in Abu Dhabi. It's bases and vessels, so like now I'm not saying that's great to be clear, but it's not regime change war. So it is something that both sides can tone themselves down from. And so all I'm saying, what is my forecast? My forecast is that oil prices will continue to be determinant of the conflict. I just don't know what the range is. I don't know what the range is. I thought that the $90 to $120 range, which we were in clearly before the ceasefire, was not going to revisit itself. I would stick to that. I think we are in an $80 to $100 range. So I think once we start approaching $100, psychological kind of barrier, the US is going to start, coming off. And by the way, Trump, like yesterday, says we're going to put 20% tariff. And then today he's like, I was just kidding. Like you can already see them like walking back from some of this. I think both sides can easily just say, well, we still hate each other, but like we want vessels to go through. And then we get some more vessels. Traffic in Hormuz went back to 40%, which is not bad given all the other stuff that's going on around the world, like Chinese demand. So yeah, I think I don't think anything, no, sorry. I don't want to say nothing's changed. Something's profoundly changed. We have less inventories, which makes this sanguine view even more correct, not less correct.
Yeah, I like the double down there. Well, I want to center on China for a second there, because there were two things that happened in China in the last week before all this started that made me raise my eyebrows. The first was, you probably saw this, China banned helium exports. And then number two, they allowed the export of refined petroleum products. They were not allowing those before. And this is the second time now with the United States bombing Iran, where it seems like China knew what was going to happen before it happened. Like, why did they fill up their reserves to such a huge capacity before the United States started bombing Iran? Why are they starting to then, tighten, restrictions on something like helium, which is going to be dependent on things happening in the Strait of Hormuz? And why are they not, they're also seeing an opportunity, like, oh, we can refine product and get it out to the market. Great. We're going to like offer that to Chinese producers. So some conspiracy Jacob wants to say that the United States is telling China what's going on here, and then maybe in some sense is building that. I don't have any evidence for that, but look, conspiracy Jacob wants to infer that.
Like, just to double click on that, look, it's consistent with my thesis. Like, oil prices got to 68, and Trump's like, look, can we just tenderize them a little bit more? Or as he likes
Trump
to call
steak.
Yeah, like denuclearize them a little bit more. Like, right, look, like, why not? It's at 70. And then some advisors like, but sir, inventories are running low. Yeah, I get it. But like, what's a month of more kinetic activity going to do? We tenderize, we sell the deal even more. We've done even more. So like, it's consistent with my thesis. Now, obviously, my thesis will be proven wrong if we get to $120 and just stay there. Now, my thesis will not be wrong if I blow through 100. I'm very cognizant of that. I don't know where the range is. I just think the range still exists. We hit some peak somewhere. What was it? $145 last time?
138.
138. So we're going to hit something, and then we're going to come back down. That is my thesis, right? And not because of a recession, but because, both sides like don't want it. And I think America is like, in February and March, I think you could have made a case that Trump's like gone unhinged and just really wants regime change. And like the Israelis saw him on a plan and he's going to triple down. Now, with inventories where they are, with him clearly now understanding the military realities of the world, of how it all works out, you would truly have to believe that he's just completely deranged, dementia, like this does not have any cognition left, to think that in July 14th, he's more likely to pursue a risky strategy than on February 28th and in March.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, and this suggests a difference in how you and I like do this, just from a brass tacks point of view, which is I don't have a forecast here. I have a couple different scenarios, but I'm not willing quite yet to stick my neck out on a forecast. But one of the reasons I think it's important analytically to think about this as either a second war or a different stage of the war is exactly what you said about regime change. The first war was the United States wanted regime change and was egged on by Israel. And I think Iran's objective in that war was just to survive, take it on the chin, keep a supreme leader up, keep the Islamic Republic up, keep the lights on. War 2.0 is a little different because I don't think the goal is regime change. I mean, President Trump has claimed he already regime changed. So, you'd have to change again. Obviously, he didn't, but he's claimed that. But it's pretty clear that the U.S. objective now is to open up the Strait of Hormuz. That is the objective of whatever this fighting is going to be. And they tried it with the MOU. Maybe the MOU was to soften Iran up, and now they're going to try and open it, maybe be the guardian of it for some future. And I think for Iran, the objective has changed from just survival to translating their survival into some form of control over the Strait of Hormuz, which is to have deterrence going forward, to have legitimacy over their ability to generate revenue off of the tolls or whatever else. And those are also very different objectives. So when we're trying to think about where this goes from here, like I think we have to think about a completely different macro context. We have to think about completely different objectives. We have to put Israel in the penalty box. They've been red carded. They're out on the side. They don't get to play anymore. Like, sorry guys, you guys flopped.
Which is telling. But that's telling though, Jacob. It's telling that America has put and keeps Israel in the penalty box because If America was serious about this warp 2.0, they would have taken them out of the penalty box. This is one of these typical Trump's 11th hour pivots. I like the material constraints to American economy have dramatically increased. Like this has to be understood. Like your point about SPR, the lowest it's been 47 years. We don't even know what's left in there. I think this is an absolute bluff. And your point is like, I think that Hormuz, the American intention is that they're going to open Hormuz. Let's be clear, they did try that. What was that, Operation Freedom Run or something? Like Operation Fun Run?
Yeah.
But they tried it for like 2 days. It required these Aegis class destroyers, Arleigh to basically follow these vessels and fire basically all of their interceptors at drones. I'm telling you this right now. The reason I have such a high conviction view that America is going to back off of this latest bout of violence is because number one, the inventory blanket is gone. There is no more cover. And number two, there is no military way to open the Strait of Hormuz. It will have to be done the way Iran wants. And President Trump, in about a month, is going to be selling us Iranian route as a route he's approved or some nonsense like that. Because there's no way. Like America, again, it's July 14th. We started this on February 28th. Where are the extra Arleigh destroyers? Where are they? How many destroyers have entered Hormuz? He's trying to do this on the cheap. And so, yeah, I think this is one of these last minute things that we've seen before in every dealing that Trump has had, which is like what motivated probably this is oil prices got low and Trump got excited about maybe doing a little bit more, and I mean, he's thinking like, look, it's mid-July, maybe I got until August, September, more time than I thought, but let's see what happens.
You and I agree that this is going to end in some period of time with Iran in control, and that the U.S. objective is not real. Where I'm pushing back against you is, I think it's completely possible that the Trump administration is not looking at the board the way that you are, and is thinking that they have a realistic chance of achieving this. There's also like a funny part of this, which is that President Trump, he seems to really admire the Iranians because he just keeps on copying and pasting their strategy. He's like, oh, you're going to have a toll? Well, I'm going to have a toll. And maybe he's probably looking at this and being like, you're going to share a toll with Oman? No, I want a toll. I want to be guardian of the Strait of Hormuz. You should wet my beak a little bit. So maybe it does end with some big
right?
arch
Like
over
right
the Strait
there.
of Hormuz with President Trump holding hands with the supreme leader, and you have to go past it as you wave your fee on top of it. But the thing that I'm pointing out is just that, does the taco happen in a week? Or does it happen in 3 months? If it happens in a week, you're right. And then it wasn't a new war. Then it's all part of the tit for tat for negotiations. And this was just a pretty loud tit. If it goes on 2 months, if it goes on 3 months, what I'm telling you is, at that point, I think maybe we get beyond our skis that the oil price is going to be able to dictate events. And maybe oil prices get beyond where events are, because we no longer have the reserves and China has to import, and maybe Russia, like there are so many different like maybe Iran accidentally hits, one of these targets in Qatar or something like that, really takes things offline. Or maybe we get some storm that hits something in Houston. Like there's just a lot less spare capacity. So when you say, what's your forecast? I'm like, dude, I don't have the balls to make I'm impressed you have the balls to make a forecast right now. I'm sitting on the sideline being like, okay, I'm gonna watch a little bit before I decide what the most likely scenario is.
Well, the baller move would be for me to tell you exactly what the oil price is, where I think it's $100. I think it's much lower than it was before because of everything you just said. Because of everything you just said, I don't think America has the room to maneuver like 2 months. There's no way this lasts months. Well, sorry, no, there is a way for this to last months. There's a way for this to last for decades. And it's that it remains within some acceptable range where we get to $70, shit pops off. We get to 100, 120 bucks, vessels go through Hormuz. Like that is the new kinetic equilibrium. That is my view. That's been my view. That's been my forecast, and it's articulated itself. It's been correct, which is that I don't have a view on the nuclear deal. Don't give a shit. I don't have a view on highly enriched uranium. Don't know what that is. Fuck it. Don't care. I don't have a view on what Israel's going to do. Couldn't give a shit. The only thing I know is that you can have Iran and America hate each other, not have a sustainable deal, and yet vessels will go through Hormuz. That is the innovation. And by the way, to pat myself on the back, I don't think anyone's made that forecast. Everyone's tried. When you talk about scenario building, most people had scenario of like, okay, well, we go to $200 oil and we all die. The canisters and cannibalism, as I jokingly called it. That was one scenario. The another scenario is like kumbaya scenario. We get a fucking nuclear deal, right? The JCPOA 2.0. This kind of mushy middle is surprising. And I think, Jacob, I think you're falling into the trap that everybody else does, which is fine, which is that we all need to have like almost a resolution. Like this either has to blow up or it's like, and we don't. I think for the next, my forecast is that you're living in this scenario, and this is part of it. And you know what's going to happen? Like oil price gets to 100, 120 bucks. They tone shit down, vessels go through, and then they start it again. That is something that I can see happening for quite some time.
Yeah,
especially as alternatives to Hormuz. Sorry to interrupt you. Especially as alternatives to Hormuz get built, like this Fujairah pipeline that China is helping UAE build. Apparently, it's going to be built much faster than anyone thought. It's going to be done in like first quarter of 2027, and we're going to have an alternative to Hormuz at least for a little bit. So at that point, who are you really? Why do you care about Hormuz at that point? Why? For Kuwaiti oil? Yes. Iraqi oil? I'm sorry. Iraq is a vassal state of Iran. So who else? Well, helium, urea, LNG from Qatar. Qataris are clearly paying the toll, by the way, like clearly. So Kuwait is going to have to do what they always do, which is like, get the short end of the stick. And then Iraq is a vassal state of Iran. So who cares what happens to them? We're going to be in a position 12 months from now where it's not even going to matter. And by the way, that's where Iran really has to rethink this. Let's be very clear. They signed onto the MOU. They signed when people said they never would. The most criticism that my view got, and I think yours too, was that eventually Iran agrees to a deal. Well, they fucking did. So why? Because clearly they know there's downside risk to popping off. One is China's angry at you. Let's leave that aside. The other one is like, dude, at some point, the value of Hormuz drops as alternatives to it are developed. And so you need to sell your leverage right now for the highest bidder. I think they get that. So the only person who doesn't get this is Trump. And I think he is being motivated this range bound of prices. So yeah, I think my forecast is we get to some peak. Unfortunately, not baller enough to tell you what price that is. It would be great if I told you it's 120 shorted end, 100 shorted end. I don't know where it is. I think it's lower than 134. But once we hit that, you'll see a different Trump. And then I think the Iranians are not going to change their view, by the way. They're going to be like, well, this guy's really hard to deal with. We really fucking hate him. But fuck, he's kind of like we are.
Well, I think they signed the deal because it was a good deal for them. And they started getting antsy because suddenly it was, okay, well, when is this 300 billion coming? Like, when are you unfreezing these assets? When are all these steps going to happen? And it started getting wishy-washy. And so they started with the back and forth. I guess we don't have to keep arguing the same point. But one of the things I'm just worried about here, or a scenario that I'm leaving open on the table, is you get to a point where the actors involved aren't able to control these things anymore. Like, think about inflation for a moment here as an analogy. Central bankers think that, I yanked this lever on interest rates and I'm going to be able to control inflation. And like when you get into an inflationary crisis or a deflationary crisis, suddenly your interest rate lever doesn't work quite as well as you thought that it did. So one of the things that I'm concerned about with this macro context, with this change in objectives, with actors who may not see the situation as rationally as you or I do, and the material constraints are without doubt, they will assert themselves over 2 months or 3 months. You and I 100% agreement that 12 months from now, we will be far less dependent on the Strait of Hormuz. Like, that ship has already flown for Iran. They've got a very limited window here to maximize some revenue, to rebuild some things, because nobody is going to be going out of the Strait of Hormuz anymore. You like to use your straw metaphor for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. I got the Daniel Day-Lewis straw going over to the milkshake in the UAE and going over to the milkshake over here. And like, we're not going to be doing the straw through the Strait of Hormuz in 12 months, which maybe also means that Iran is a little bit more desperate. All of which is just to say, though, like, if you get to a point where prices are starting to spiral, maybe stopping the hostilities doesn't end things. And here I would just go to the CPI print today. I'm always like astounded and also reassured when the media is so stupid about something. The headline is that it was the biggest 1 month decrease since April 2020. But over 12 months, we still increased 3.5%. The index for energy fell 5.7% in June as a result, to your point, of those ships getting through. And the energy index, I'm going to read from the Bureau of Labor Statistics right now, was the largest contributor to the monthly all items decrease, more than offsetting increases in other indices, including those for shelter and food. What I'm telling you is that if you're President Trump and if you have half a brain to get to the second paragraph of the CPI print, you should already be freaking out because prices are going up. And the only reason the CPI print looks okay at all is because there was a decline in prices because some ships got through. And this is the last thing I'll just say because I'm so tired of these media organizations that keep on asking Trump questions, and every time he says something, they put it on the front page. You're exactly right. How many ships are getting through the strait? I sat up in my chair and said, war is on, because ships stopped going through the strait over the weekend. We were back, to your point, 40, 50% of normal flow. We're back down another 50, 60%, and no ships are going to go through, even if they're only hitting bases and other things like that. And as long as ships are not going through, like, I'm now concerned that you have scenarios where you can get these spirals. So I agree with you on the material constraints. I think the place where you and I are sort of converging is you are willing to go out there and say, hey, like, it's going to be 100, it's going to be 120, it's going to be relatively short. And I'm saying, I'm looking at President Trump's behavior and I'm saying he's already ignoring the material constraints in front of them. What if he ignores them for another 2 months? What if he escalates some more? What if he really just believes what he said in the 80s, that he's got to take Carg Island and that's going to be the thing that unlocks everything? He might do that. He might try and it'll blow up in his face. The material constraint will be there and we'll be in the exact same place we would have been otherwise. But the journey that we're going to travel for these commodities and things like that is going to be very different if that's who we have in charge. So that's my only point, I guess.
I mean, you keep just giving evidence for why materials constraints are like a boa constrictor, like growing. Great read of the CPI. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Right? I mean, energy collapse has allowed all this other stuff to not matter. I do think he read to the second paragraph where that was explained to him. And I do think he understands SPR math. Like Chris Wright, right? The energy secretary, maybe the top cabinet member in the United States of America in terms of expertise. So what I'm getting at is everything you just said increases the constraints. And then I have a thesis for why Trump is acting the way he is. Number one, oil prices being an independent variable. They got to $68. He's like, fuck it, let's play a little bit more in the sandbox. And two, this is the 7 steps of maximum pressure I've detailed before, where every time we get close to a deal, he just kind of leaves the bride at the altar, as I call, step, I think 6. Anyways, yeah, that's just it. It's like everything that's happening right now is kind of consistent with that thesis that oil prices are independent. Why do I have more confidence than you? I just think because we've seen this before with tariffs, we've seen it with other things. Because we got the MOU once already, because Iran understands their own constraints as well. I just am not going to believe this bluff. I think this is just a bluff. Anyways, we're kind of going in circles, but it's fine.
But it's great because I think you think I'm falling into a media trap, and I'm going back at you and saying you're falling into the Richard Hoyer trap, which is this has not happened before. Like what we saw from February to May, like blank slate, like let's start completely from scratch. And I still probably end up in the same place as you if you put a gun to my head and make me pick one of these forecasts. But there's enough different out there in the world that I have, you can feel my ambivalence or my anxiety about having to make
I would say that this is what's really difficult about incorporating geopolitics into finance. Yep. And what I mean by that is that the objective measure of geopolitical risk has increased in many ways. Like you're pointing out, dude, the world is worse than it was in March. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm more sanguine. That's what's really difficult, I think, about this. Because, the fundamentals have made Trump backing off more likely. But I also do agree with you that there's less room for error. There's less room for dilly-dallying. There's less room for dementia-induced paralysis, right? So that's what you're pointing out. But Marko, there's all these other probabilities and all these other scenarios. All I would say to you is that I think March was a very scary time. Let's not pretend that today is worse, because in March we were still talking about regime change. in March, Israel was involved, and in March we had, targeting of actual energy infrastructure that will cause like near permanent damage. So I do think that those were cases in March where like Iran was fighting for its survival, and at that point, like they were basically telling the rest of us like game's on. But yeah, I mean it's a good discussion. It's
No, I admire your Mamba
what
mentality here over the, like, you're willing to say this over the next 3 months. And like, I'm willing to say, I'm going to spend all my energy on like, well, how do I capitalize on Hormuz being irrelevant 12 months from now? Like, I feel really confident in that. I think I'm going to focus on that. You're saying like, no, I have this confident view, like the next 3-4 months. And like all credit to the Mamba. There's a reason that Kobe's taking those shots in game 7, like I don't have the Kobe instinct.
Listen, Kobe is a top 10 player all time with 44.7% field goal percentage. And I always like make that point. Very inefficient player. What I'm detailing here is not efficient. But in the playoffs, you got to take the tough shot, right? So that's what I don't think there's any way to like really get out of this without taking, I guess, a difficult shot in mid-range pull up with like 4 seconds to go in the shot clock and hope the Shaq like cleans up. And I think you're being like, well, I just want to be Shaq. I just want to like dunk on people. And so I'm going to stick with a 12 to 18 month view. And like, hey, listen, but it's a podcast. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I'm with you. I'm saying if I can't get the ball on the block 5 feet from the basket and I can't shove it down your throat, I'm not going to do a Joel Embiid impersonation out here. I'm not out here dancing around on the 3-point line.
No, you're passing it back to Kobe. You're like, go ahead.
Please. It's Kobe time. Speaking of sports, I mean, I know that I'm like a neophyte and a recent convert to all this, but is it just me or was that Switzerland red card bullshit? Like I was watching, I mean, like it just seemed ridiculous to me. Okay, great. I'm glad that I wasn't off base. I looked at that and I was like, all right, come on. You already did Egypt that way. Now you're going to do Switzerland this way? Like what? I mean, I know what's going on. We talked about how FIFA is not a paragon of moral virtue.
I think look, I mean, everything's lined up for Argentina. They played Cape Verde, Egypt, and Switzerland to get to the semifinals. Like, Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, come the fuck on. But yeah, I mean, like the ref does have discretion. I get it. It was clearly a simulation. It was not a foul, So take away the yellow and don't determine the result of the game in the fucking quarters.
Exactly.
Like just use, and this is where like following the rule versus discretion, it's so stupid. You can use your discretion and issue a warning because he's on his yellow. Like you have now in football, you take away that player and you have meaningfully changed the dynamic of this game.
Yeah.
You ruined the last like 60 minutes of entertainment for us.
Well, it felt like Switzerland, I don't know if they were going to win. It felt like they had a chance. Like it was really, I was like gripped. And then after that, I was like, okay, like this is not going to happen, obviously. But speaking of Cape Verde, David McWilliams did a podcast about this, and I didn't know this about Cape Verde, but it was one of the main places for the slave trade where before slaves got to Brazil, they were in Cape Verde. So it's like part of the Brazilian soccer nexus in some weird way. Like you just see Brazil
it's African,
continuing to be good.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I did not know that. I mean, I knew the Portuguese connection. I just didn't think of it that way. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it really got me. Cousin, do you have 10 more minutes, or do we need to call it a shorty?
I have time. No. We can keep going. Let me just see. I mean, the constraint here, my friend, is of course France, Spain. Let's not forget it's July 14th, La Fête Nationale, also known as Bastille Day in the rest of the world. So this is going to be incredible. I do want to see the rendition of the Marseillaise, one of the best anthems in the world. By the way, we should do an anthem podcast where we just go through the list of best anthems, right? Are you an anthem connoisseur?
Well, listeners may not know this, but I was once a singer in the Cornell University Glee Club, and for 2 years in a row, I was the Omega of the Cornell University Glee Club. So for 2 years running, I had the lowest voice in the Cornell University Glee Club. When you're singing those Rachmaninoff Vespers, you want me coming in with that low B flat. That's what I can provide. Which is funny because I was a boy soprano. Anyway, I digress. We had to learn national anthems whenever we went on tour abroad. So like I've learned the national anthem of China to sing in China. I've learned the national anthem of France to sing in France. So I
Dude,
wouldn't
let's
say that I'm
go.
a connoisseur, but I have a couple weird ones in there that I have sort of a deep
We got to
relationship.
do this. We got to do this. Pencil this in. By the way, just you said you were a boy soprano and then you became like just like a tenor or what? What did you become?
Yeah, I used to get bullied because I had such a high voice. And then, like, you know how most boys, like, their voices, like, kind of scratch and they get awkward. I went from, like, you know, girly voice and getting bullied to this voice
Yeah.
overnight. And I sort of skipped the in between phase. It was really great for my social standing because I went from not getting invited to parties to getting, it was literally overnight. Like, it was, oh, Jacob is not a girl. Like, Jacob is actually a boy with a grown man voice. That's really cool. So,
Was the delta in the voice commensurable to the delta in like how much they dropped?
yeah. I mean, I went from, like, soprano 1 to, like, bass 2. Like,
Okay.
basically
I don't
overnight.
think you get what I was trying to get at, but it's
No,
okay.
I don't get it. Say
This
it
is a
again.
family show. We can go
Oh, it's
back.
I'm sorry. Sorry. I didn't have my head in the gutter there.
I
Well,
always
and
do.
by the way, I'm rooting for England. Like I'm totally in the bag for England. We'll see what they do against Messi in the next
I mean,
game.
yeah, I am too. I am too, just because you know, I a good friend that I name dropped last time, Emin. He was very happy, by the way, that I called him a football snob or a connoisseur, who has been like shaking his little fist about the whole tournament. He made a good point. Like Messi is undoubtedly one of the greatest players ever, but it's the you know it's like the whole thing, like where we all have to worship him now. Like it's constantly being repeated. Like, and it's like it grates on actual fans of the game who are like, well, there's other players that I want to follow. You know, like this is he's become like a kids, teenage, like McDonald's Happy Meal version of football. They can be like
Hmm.
packaged and sold to everyone. And it's just like enough. You know, like they played Cape Verde, Egypt, and Switzerland. And by the way, almost lost to all fucking three of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, let's go. You know, like like who doesn't want, other than the Argentinians? Okay, God bless you. Obviously, you got to cheer for your country, even though it's become a contrived product that's literally been put on a pedestal for everyone's consumption, so we can all become like football fans. But like, yeah, like I think the whole world wants England to win, which is rare.
Well, I don't know about the whole world. I feel the Scottish and Irish listeners getting ready to type to us as they tell us about why they don't want England to win. Cousin, but before we go, there's one thing. When I started writing my like weekly missive to my clients before all this Iran shenanigans started in the Strait of Hormuz again, I was going to write about Japan, and I was going to write about the rising yield in Japanese government bonds, and kind of what's happening there from a macro perspective in general. And I wanted to bring it up at the end of the podcast, just because I think it's actually directly tied to what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, because Japan is a major energy importer, and they're seeing, higher energy prices are eating into the first, they're eking out finally some increases in real wages in Japan for the first time in years. And boom, like the higher energy prices is eating into that. And you're getting pressure on Takaichi. You're getting the yen falling. You're getting, I don't know if you saw over the weekend, like social media was a buzz about, oh my gosh, like this is the moment, like the carry trade is going to collapse, and the Japanese central
Yeah,
bank, they're going to
yeah.
issue a yen stable coin because they need some new demand for all these other things. So I wanted to put it in your machine because I think it's actually a great example of how geopolitics in one place affects markets and geopolitics in another place. Like what's happening today in the Strait of Hormuz, not good. Like in Tokyo, they're probably having conversations that are relatively unpleasant. And this is also one of the most important markets in the world. So I thought we should cook on that for a few minutes before we said goodbye.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that is something that is making the rounds in the macro world. You know, so this is definitely an issue. I think it's going to be very difficult for Japan to do anything about it. And this is a great way to connect what you're talking about. Like, hey, this is a serious issue. Yes, I agree. If oil prices end up averaging like $110, that's not a good idea for a number of different places. Japan is one. The carry trade, for those of you who want to kind of wrap your mind around it, domestic opportunities for investment return in Japan are very low. So Japanese investors take their toys and kind of like go abroad. The risk is if the bond yield goes up, they can take those toys and go home. Literally, just take them away, sell US tech and buy, equities or
Japanese tech.
Mm.
or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. And the Japanese finance minister on Friday, before the fighting really got serious over the weekend, said that they were going to steer the Japanese government pension fund, which is, I believe, the largest pension fund in the world, to purchase more Japanese assets. Now, I don't know how you do that. Can you actually do that? But I sat up in my
Oh, for
shout out to
sure.
Chase Taylor, who was the one who like flagged it to me. Like I sat up in my chair a little bit because I was like, oh, he's telling this pension fund to buy Japanese assets, and the yen is at 162. Like, this is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, previous interventions by the central bank, at least, have never has never really helped the yen on a sustainable basis. But I think like you're pointing to a very serious threat to like the U.S. equity market. Another example, by the way, of this, where we're connecting what's going on in the Middle East somewhere else, is we just published a report at BC Research, my team, on France.
Mhm.
My colleague Jeremy Peloso, who actually couldn't attend the World Cup forecast. He was part of that triumvirate. He runs all our European strategy. And what's interesting is that about 6 months ago, I think you and I might have talked about this. It still looked like the centrists, Macron's party, was going to defeat Marine Le Pen's candidate, Jordan
Mhm.
Bordella, or herself in the second round. That's no longer the case. And
No.
what's been the difference in the last 6 months is inflation. It's the pernicious macro environment that we've been in. Europe is not doing great. Um, it's not just the stagflation. It's they're slowing down, and so this is an interesting kind of consequence. It's a political consequence of what's happened this year, where the election in France seems to be going uh, the way of the right wing.
Well, and don't discount the impact of this crazy weather that this super El Nino is having
Oh
in
yes,
France too.
exactly.
I mean, we're talking about sky high temperatures. We're talking about people dying as a result of the heat. We're talking about not being able to use nuclear reactors because the water is not cool enough to actually cool the reactors, which means France is now looking at energy markets in a different way. We're talking about changes in agricultural markets because France is supposed to be a producer, and the things they grow aren't going to grow in 100-degree plus heat.
So we wrote
Yeah.
about that as well this month, the Super El Nino. My colleague Rukai Ibrahim and myself, and yeah, it was interesting. Like it's very important that when you try to assess the impact of something like El Nino on different crops, you also take into account like storage. It's not always the
Mhm.
same. El Nino doesn't affect, but we created a vulnerability index and then ranked different softs based on that. So yeah, definitely Super El Nino is coming. And on one hand, I'm trying to pick which softs my clients should buy as a result. And on the other one, I'm trying to figure out where is the snow going to be good in North America, because it's a very tricky proposition. That's really what I care about.
Yeah. Well, I
And I'm not
down here
going
in
to
the Gulf,
say, I'm not going to say where it's going to be, because then everyone will be there.
well, I mean, if anybody wants to know, you can email me and I can tell you where it is. But I'm happy because here on the Gulf, it's cooler here than it's like is in Montana right now, and also we've got a nice wind that is just blowing up any
Really?
hurricanes that would come at us at the Atlantic. Yes, El Nino is good for storm season. If we get a La Nina of similar size, I might have to move in with you wherever you're living at that point in time. All right,
Awesome.
cousin. Anything else you got before we get out of here?
No, who are you picking? France, Spain?
Who am I? I think it's France. I think it's going to be France, England, and probably France is going to win. But I'm going to hold out hope for the
Mm.
underdog here. What about you?
I am, like I really like this French team. I mean, it's not that I don't like the Spanish. I think it's an awesome team as well. I just think, I don't know, the French team is awesome. The way they handled themselves in Paraguay game was cool. So I'm kind of
I I'm a fairly unsophisticated soccer fan, but like even me, I've watched a good deal of the World Cup. The French look like they're playing a different game. They're so much faster than everybody else. Like I feel like every other team has one or two guys that you really need to watch for. Like France has like they're led by the best guy, and then they have like three other guys who would be the best guys on the other teams. Like it just looks like, which is one of the reasons. Like one of the reasons I give England a fighting chance here is exactly because of that performance in the Azteca. Like it's gonna have to be that kind of
no, you're right.
gritty like performance because if you're just going like talent for talent, like I'm not a soccer guy and I know that nobody's beating this French team unless Mbappe gets hurt or something like that, but like they look like they're playing a different game than everybody else.
I think you're right, man. I think sometimes like coming into an environment where you're not necessarily like weighed by all the empirical evidence, I think you nailed it. I think the performance in Azteca was that important because it was so difficult, like the context. And that's exactly the type of a game that England has always lost. They can beat the Germans, they can beat the French, they can beat the Spanish, they can beat European powers, but it's like this kind of like weird game against a South American, Latin American country where like they always get rattled, get red cards, lose their cool, and they kept their cool and won. They got another one coming up tomorrow against Argentina. And my only fear, Jacob, is that if this World Cup has taught us anything, it's that like the powers to be, not to be conspiratorial, but they really want the France Argentina rematch. Like that's my only concern. And if that
Which
ends
is
up being the
why,
case, I mean, I'll be very
which is
disappointed.
Which is why England, like, they can't just win by a little bit. If they're going to win against Argentina, they have to leave no doubt. Because if there's any doubt, if there's any like gray area, I think you're exactly right. Like there's going to be that little nudge to push Argentina over. So
You're
like
so right.
Jude, the captain, like we need to score early. We need to score
two.
often.
Yeah,
Aggression,
two, like right away. Yeah, let's go. No, you were
which is why
absolutely right.
I think that English coach is being really smart. He's like, we were lucky against Norway. We
I like that.
suck. Let's go. Like that's exactly the type of message you want if you want to come out storming. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All right.
All right. We'll see y'all next time.